Hey everyone, welcome to Unearth with Shelly Hughes podcast. I'm Shelly Hughes. In this podcast, we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of running a business. We dive into the mistakes, the lessons learned, and especially the wins of running a small business and entrepreneurship. And I'm glad you can come along the ride with me. Today, and this is a topic that I'm asked about a lot, we talk about employee development. Um, which I think can be a very long podcast episode in itself. But I really want to dive into, what kind of the communication looks like with my employees. Um, and it's all about really putting the ownership into their hands. And so when I bring someone on, the first thing we talk about is a really core value that we hold at Nolia Roots called extreme ownership. It is a concept made by Jocko Willink, and that book, everyone should read it. That book changed my life, changed the way I work, changed the way I live. And it's all about how to lead up and down the chain. And it's all about not blaming other people for mistakes. And which is really hard to do sometimes, right? But it's about taking extreme ownership in what you do and um, the mistakes that you make, whether it is directly or indirectly. So, for example, if a deadline doesn't get met, and I'm not exactly the person, you know, um, responsible for meeting that deadline, but I'm kind of the person that you know is overseeing the entire project. I would never go to the person responsible for that deadline and say, hey, you did this, you didn't hit the deadline. Because honestly, it causes resentment and it's incredibly unproductive to do. So, what I do is say, hey, this deadline wasn't met. What could I have done better to help you with your goal? What could I have done better? How could I have guided you more? What kind of direction did you need? And so we celebrate mistakes, but we also take them really seriously. And instead of saying, putting someone immediately on a performance review, program, um, I take ownership and I'm like, what could I have done better to make sure that didn't happen? And so what I talk about with my employees is I want them to do that up the chain as well. So that's kind of down the chain, but up the chain. If I mess up, if I show up to a meeting and you know um I'm not prepared, or whatever it is, I want other people to lead up the chain saying Shelly wasn't prepared for this meeting. Like, instead of saying, oh, I can't believe like she totally screwed this up, which like I make mistakes all the time. I want them to think, what could I have done to help Shelly be better prepared for this meeting, better prepared for this call? And so what that does is it brings blame internally and makes the entire situation really productive because everyone is trying to accomplish the same goal instead of saying instead of ignoring the problem, right? So in that, when I, talk to my team about how they're doing performance, I really have them lead it. So when I bring someone on, I talk to them about what are their goals for this position, what do they want to accomplish, what are some of the big achievements that they want, and then we sit down on a monthly and a 6-month basis and say, you know, I'll ask them questions like, you know, tell me about if this past month has been good, bad, or satisfactory, and why. Like, truly, what how was it? What do you consider to be your most important achievements for this month? What do you like and dislike about working your position? And so, on a monthly basis, I like to have some of these prompted questions that's not really focusing on their performance, but it's focusing on what lights them up. What should they feel proud of? Truly tell me, has this month sucked? Why? And sometimes, I've noticed some employees, like, they might feel a little bit distant for a while, And unless I ask questions like this, it's really hard for them to open my door and say, hey, I'm having a crappy month. I need some support. And so sometimes if I notice that, I won't wait until the monthly meeting to ask these questions. But what it also does is it opens up opportunities to figure out what this person wants to work more on. And so that's a question I ask. I'm just pulling it up right now on my laptop. I ask, what elements of your job do you find most difficult? What elements of your job interest you the most? What do you want to do more of? And that's a really interesting one because, like I said in my episode about my first hire and just my philosophy around hiring, um, I want to move people to do the tasks and have the responsibilities that really light them up, because it's only then that they're going to be doing amazing work. And so I don't want the business to be so not flexible enough where I hire this person, it's this role, it's this, the name of the role is this, and that's all they do. As a small business, I think we have such an amazing opportunity to be so flexible in the roles and responsibilities with some of these positions. Some of these bigger companies, they might not have that adaptability that we have. So, and those bigger companies, they have 401k matches. They have sometimes the amazing healthcare that small businesses might not always be able to afford. But what we can do is make sure that you freaking love your job. And so, one thing that I really focus on these monthly one-on-ones is personal development and figuring out what do you want to do more of and what do you want to do less of. So one of my employees, they said, I hate social media. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to be near it. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to smell it. And um, part of their original job was social media, and they realized how much they truly hated it. And it was just something that they might have been hired partially for, but it did not light them up anymore. And I said, okay, let's get you out of it as soon as possible. And past leaders, the CEO of the old company I work with, she did a really, really good job of that, of listening to what you wanted to do and what your interests were, because she knew that if you were doing something that you were interested in, you were going to do that job really, really well. And so that's something I always ask, and I got directly from her. Um, but it's also celebrating those wins, right? And these monthly ones, I want to be really positive. So I don't really talk about, okay, what were some of the things you messed up on, because honestly, we have the EF awards, the Embrace Failure awards every week. We talk about failures enough. During these one-on-ones, I really want to ask what they feel like they accomplished. So I ask, what do you feel like is your biggest achievement for this past month? And what do you consider to be the most important items and tasks and achievements for the coming months? And so it really puts them in this positive mindset, that it's sometimes hard to get in on your own. Um, and then I get into, you know, how can I help you do your job better? Right. So I ask the question, what action can be taken to really improve your performance in your position, either by me, by the company, by your teammates, by you? And this can go into experiences, like what kind of experiences would help? Do you want me to send you to a conference? Do we need to change something in our system? It really is able to open up this dialogue of how can we make people's jobs more enjoyable, more efficient, um, that they might not be totally open to bringing up on a regular day. But if I prompt these questions over and over and over again every single month, the answers kind of come out in other times as well, which is my goal. I don't want people to wait until the one-on-one to talk about a concern that they have, because I want to make sure we find a challenge and we solve it very quickly. So it creates this environment and the culture of um, shouting out when someone sees that something is not done as well as it could be, which as a small business, as a lot of small businesses know, finding those issues quickly and solving them quickly, it it just helps so much in the overall process. Um, and then I ask him, what kind of work do you want to be doing in 1 year's time, 2 years' time, 5 years' time? Because And it's interesting when I first hire someone, usually they really don't know. They don't know what they want it to look like. But if I keep asking them this question in addition to all these other questions, they start to create a vision in their mind of what they want their life to look like, what kind of projects they want to work on, and it allows me to give them more work like that, because they might not be able to say, oh, I like this, I don't like that. So I kind of phrase these questions in multiple different ways to see if a certain question sparks an idea in them, or they can relate to, that they can really talk about a little bit more in depth. And so I asked them, where do you want to be in 1 year? What do you want to be doing? What projects do you want to be working on? Who do you want to be talking to? What do you want to be responsible for? Then look at the 2 year mark, and then look at the 5 year mark. And that 5 year mark is really interesting because it kind of, depending on where they are in their career, um, it allows them to really say, okay, this is where I'll be at kind of the prime of my um, position, right? And what should that look like? So that is on a monthly basis. Then, and these are very positive back and forth feedback. Um, every 6 months, we have a, kind of one-on-one, performance review. And I really want to transform it into a 360 review. To be completely honest, I haven't done that yet. It's on my to-do list because I want my people to rate my performance just as much. I want them to do it so badly because I see how much it helps them. I need feedback as well. So I'm going to get to the 360-degree review. But right now, I just keep it with them. And I have different categories that I want them to rate themselves first. So some of these categories are knowledge of job, quality and effort in work, productivity and dependability, communication, initiative, client focus. And then I go into kind of a more deeper self evaluation. And so I ask them to come to the meeting with a rating of 1 to 5 and an explanation of each of those categories. And what's really interesting is that I will then come to the meeting with my rating with them, and we kind of compare and contrast. And what's so funny about this is a lot of times they will rate themselves lower than what I rate them. And and if there is an area that I feel like they need to improve on, typically they feel like they need to improve on that also. So how I approach this is, okay, let's talk about productivity and dependability. How would you rate yourself? They might give them a 3 out of 5, and they might give the reason. And without me even going back and rating them, we can talk about, okay, what's happening here? What do we need help with? How can we make this better? Because if I come out and just say, I'm going to give you a 2.5 because you haven't been good at this, and this, that's not helpful. So it's really interesting when they give their own ratings first, because then we can just have a conversation about it. And usually, if they're not doing well in a certain area, they already know it. They don't have to be told if they're not doing well in an area. And so it just allows communication to open up about solving the challenge, and I am more so identifying the challenge, why the rating is so low, and how to fix it. So that's really helpful. And then I go into a self evaluation of, you know, I ask questions like, really, what are your objectives for the next 6 months? What additional support do you need? Um, you know, really, have your responsibilities changed over time? I ask about what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy about the work, some of your top career goals. I also ask them if they see any gaps in the organization or leadership, or if there is any need for improvement in those. Because again, it's not officially a 360-degree review, but I always want them to give feedback on me about how things are done. And, you know, I think that a lot of good tips come out of that make me really think and make me focus on. Because honestly, if the things that I'm doing is not efficient for my employees, it's not efficient for anyone. So that really helps me. So I approach very basically, um, you know, employee development I would, we can talk about KPIs a whole other time, but I would love to hear your feedback. If you like this episode, please comment below, give us a 5 stars. It'd be really helpful for us to get this in front of people who need to, hear this just as much as you do. Get some of these ideas flowing. Um, Also, if you want to send this to someone you think would enjoy listening to this conversation, please do. But I appreciate you joining us today. I hope you have a good one.